The first Remnant from the Ashes is an incredible game. If you aren't familiar with it, the quick and dirty way of describing it is to think of it as a shooter, Dark Souls, or Elden Ring. That gives you a very general understanding of what's in store for you, but there are so many unique and compelling elements to this game that make it stand out. So I'll be going over everything you need to know before playing Remnant from the Ashes 2 to have the most enjoyable experience. Remnant features different class archetypes that have their own unique traits and abilities. You can also find different armor, jewelry, weapons, and weapon mods to customize and build your character. Remnant features dynamic playthroughs. No two games will be the same. Every area has different layouts, enemies, NPCs, loot, and even bosses. If you are a completionist, or perhaps there's a certain item you really want that isn't showing up in your worlds, you can jump into the lobbies of other players that have that dungeon or boss that you need. This provides robust replayability. You can finish the game, start a new world plus, and essentially play an entirely different game the second time through. There will be core pillars that remain the same, like the biomes, story, and certain bosses, but everything in between can vary greatly. Adding on to the variability, even the way you take down a boss can alter the loot that it drops. For example, in Remnant 1, there is a huge ant boss, and if you destroy its legs before killing it, you are rewarded with an item that crafts a melee weapon. But if you kill the boss without destroying its legs, you receive an item that crafts a ranged weapon instead. Typically, it's quite intuitive and will provide you the reward that suits your playstyle. Against that ant boss, if you are a melee build, you'll be hitting its legs, so you'll inevitably end up with the melee reward. And if you're a ranged build, you'll be going for the weak spots near the head, ignoring the legs, so you'll end up with the ranged reward. If you try a second playthrough or join someone else's lobby and face a boss you've already killed before, it can be worth observing the fight's theme and seeing if there's an alternate or special way you can approach the encounter so you can attain a different reward this time. The game encourages and rewards exploration. While it's not an open world game, within your current area there will often be hidden loot if you take the time to explore. It can be as simple as walking down an alleyway and finding a new ring, breaking some wooden panels that are covering a hole to a new room that has some hidden armor, or more elaborate exploration and puzzles like finding items to repair a fuse box that lets you open a door, then turning off that fuse box to disable a massive fan, then walking through that fan to a hidden room that has a submachine gun weapon that you can't find anywhere else. If you find something that you can interact with, but it doesn't seem to do anything, chances are there are certain conditions you can meet to make something happen. For example, in Remnant 1, at the end of one of the potential dungeons, you are rewarded with a twisted mask. In that same area, there's a spooky tree that speaks incoherently, but if you equip that mask and then talk to the tree, you can now understand it and receive a unique trait. Speaking of traits, they are different stats that you can allocate points into. In Remnant 1, you can invest a maximum of 20 points into a single trait. You start out with some basic options like health and stamina, and as you progress through the story, defeat bosses, explore secrets, and reach all sorts of different thresholds, you can be rewarded with new traits. For example, in Remnant 1, if you defeat 150 enemies with weak spot damage, you unlock the Exploiter trait that then provides bonus weak spot damage. Much like the intuitive boss rewards, traits are similarly rewarded. Chances are your current playstyle will grant you bonus traits that suit the way you are playing. You may feel incentivized to save up your points until you find the perfect trait, but honestly it's not that crucial. An effective way to approach allocating your points is if you're in doubt and there's no obvious trait that suits your playstyle, or the bonuses just don't seem worthwhile enough, you can't go wrong with investing into your health and stamina until the right trait comes along. You can only respec in Remnant 1 after finishing the game, so you do need to exercise some caution with how you build your character. Perhaps this will function differently in Remnant 2, but we just don't know yet. Like I said, if you're unsure, just allocate points into the basics like health and stamina until you figure out what playstyle and traits you want to build around. Similar to Souls games, you have a role that is used to avoid mechanics and navigate the environment. There are some invincibility frames within the role, so if it's well timed, you can completely avoid damage. The encumbrance from your gear, so heavy gear being slower and lighter gear being faster, will change how long the rolling animation is. The iframes are the same, but the time you are locked into the movement will vary. When dodging, you roll in the direction you are moving. If you dodge while standing still, you perform a neutral dodge, which is a quick backstep. Damage is broken down into normal hits that are white, yellow for critical hits, red for weak spots, bold red for weak spot crits, and grey for hitting against armor. There are also other status effects like bleeding, radiation, corrosion, and so on. Critical hits can happen at any time, with the chance and damage increased through abilities, traits, and gear. Weak spot damage only occurs when hitting a weak spot. Typically, this is the head, and if not, it's usually indicated with a brighter, glowing area on the enemy. Most enemies will have a weak spot, but not all. You are also able to hit weak spots with melee attacks, so if possible, try to swing at the correct height to hit these areas for some extra damage. Your melee attacks are broken down into light attacks with a single button press, heavy attacks by holding down the input, special lunge attacks when you melee while sprinting, and a weapon-specific attack when you melee after doing a neutral dodge. You are able to weave in heavy attacks at any point in a weapons combo. To optimize your aim when playing on PC, there are a few config changes that greatly help. This may work differently or be fixed in Remnant 2. If that's the case, I'll post a pinned comment with any updates. Unfortunately, Remnant has mouse smoothing and negative mouse acceleration with no in-game settings to turn them off. The X and Y sensitivities are significantly different, and the in-game sensitivity slider has enormous jumps. Mouse smoothing tries to smooth out and predict your mouse movements, which may sound nice, but it makes smaller adjustments and your responsiveness much worse. Negative mouse acceleration means your sensitivity feels slower the faster you move your crosshair. For example, if you slowly moved your mouse to the edge of the mousepad, you may rotate a few times in game. But if you quickly swipe it to the edge, you would only move a small distance. To achieve crisp and responsive aim in Remnant, we can do the following. Copy and paste this location into your file explorer, it's linked in the description, and open up input.ini. The name may become Remnant 2 or something like that in the new game. Copy and paste this into the notepad and save it. To fine-tune your sensitivity to get around the huge jumps in the in-game settings, open up GameUserSettings.ini. When manually entering your sensitivities, you need to add 2 extra decimals. For example, if 0 feels too slow and 1 feels too fast, and you suspect 0.5 would be the sweet spot, you would enter 0.005. For your vertical sensitivity, if you want it to be 1-to-1 with your horizontal, most of the time you need to about double or triple the horizontal value. Unfortunately, this isn't linear, so I would recommend making your vertical sensitivity double that of your horizontal and making any further adjustments from there as needed. For your aimed and scoped sensitivities, I would personally start with the in-game settings and find what feels too fast and too slow, like 0 and 1 or 1 and 2, then choosing a value in between there that you think would be ideal and entering that into the config. The vertical sense is again about 2 to 3 times higher than the horizontal if you want it to be 1-to-1. I know this seems complicated and convoluted, and to an extent it is, and these similar issues seem to be prevalent in the majority of PvE focused shooters. Hopefully Remnant 2 will have fixed these issues, but if not, with a little effort we can work around it. And that'll about do it. There's plenty more that could be said about min-maxing and exactly how to build your characters, but the purpose of this guide is to best prepare you to make the most of your own experience with Remnant from the Ashes 2. The first game was extremely fun in both single and multiplayer, and I personally can't wait to try out this next installment. Thanks so much for watching, be sure to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll catch you in the next one.